Hey, I'm Ben Silverio.
I'm Aaron Klein.
And I'm Ansel Birch, your host in post.
And it's time to party.
We are not doctors, we don't give medical advice. Please drink responsibly. Today's episode was recorded on April 3rd, 2021.
You might think that we're singing our own theme song, but we're actually not.
I wonder what our theme song could possibly be an ode to.
Welcome back, party people!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this, the second episode of our series on the classic movie, Back to the Future, Part 3.
Yay, Aaron, why did we pick Part 3?
Well, Part 3, I think part of the reason that we picked Part 3 is because this is often the overlooked one. This is the one that I feel like when people are asked to name their favorite, a lot of times people say the first or second. We talked in the last episode about how the second is both of our favorite ones. And also, like, I haven't seen this one as much as the other ones. I've probably seen it 50 times, but I've seen it less than the other ones.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't get enough love, you know?
Yeah.
People will just be like, oh, that one's not as good, but it really is. It's just as
totally
good
is.
as the other two.
Oh, absolutely. It totally is. I feel like it also gets lumped together because you can tell there's a gap in filming between the first and second ones because there actually is a gap. There were like 5 years between that, whereas they shot the second and the third one like basically back to back. I think there were a couple of things that overlapped actually. Some of the scenes.
They were shot back to back. They were shot at the same time.
So you can feel that. It definitely feels like these two movies are a group, and like the first one feels like a separate movie in lots of ways. And so I think a lot of people feel like, oh, the first and the second one, you could just kind of be done after that. But like the third one is so important to Doc's character and to Marty's like actual growth. Like the first one is about Marty like getting the physical things that he wants, and the second one is about realizing like his connection to people and starting to like understand that he needs to grow as a person in order to like connect meaningfully. And then the third one is about like really solidifying those. Like you strip away all the personal possessions, you strip away all of the people around you that you have like real like, it's not like your parents. Like seeing your distant relative is amazing and would be very cool, but is really different than interacting with like people who you interact with in your present state also. And so I feel like as the third one, we get to see the like really essential character of both Marty and Doc. And as an adult, I love that. I think it's cool. And like I've really warmed to this movie as I've gotten older. And I'm really glad that we chose this because I feel like it really reaffirmed my love for the third one in a way I like didn't really realize.
Absolutely. And just like seeing all of these things that were set up in the other movies finally pay off, you know, in interesting ways, you don't get that without Part 3. Mm-hmm. So we're here today to be advocates for Back to the Future Part 3, even though some people won't be.
Also, hot take, you could watch this one on its own and it would still make total sense. But like, there's things about it, obviously, that it's helpful to have seen the first two, but you don't really have to. Like, if you like Westerns and you've never seen the Back to the Future movies, just watch the third one. They tell you what's happening at the beginning. You get, like, a really succinct update on what's going on, basically. Like, you don't need to have watched the other ones. I didn't watch the other ones before I watched it. I could have, because I love them. But I was just, like, even starting at that time, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is a great explanation about where exactly we are in this story.
Yes. So to start, I think I want to spotlight Robert Zemeckis and his really creative shots. You know, he has these very dynamic moments, you know, that he captures. Like there's a moment in Doc's shop, or you know, what barn house thing.
He has like weird barn living area, his living quarters, I think is probably the way that you
he loves those. Living in like a weird garage.
Yeah, because he wants to build a bunch of weird shit from I wrote that down actually. Like, of course Doc wants to go to the Old West where he's forced to build a Rube Goldberg machine in order to make ice. Like, this is his fucking dream, is to do shit like this. Like, he wants the space to be able to do it, and you can have a train loud machine and no one cares. Like, people truly didn't give a shit what you did.
They just accept it because that's what goes on back then.
Yeah, exactly.
So in this
No rules.
scene, Marty is realizing that, oh, fuck, we need gas. And the camera, it's like you're seeing it from Marty's point of view, so you see Doc, but Doc is standing next to a mirror, so you see Marty's expression too.
Yes, that double shot of them standing in front of the mirror is so good. It's so good. Like,
Yes.
you're right. He does a lot of really interesting things about, especially by the time you get to this movie, I feel like he knows these characters so well, and like the story is so solid that you can kind of play around with that stuff and it doesn't feel jarring even. Like, it just felt seamlessly like, yes, here's this really interesting composition that doesn't make me feel pulled away from the rest of the movie.
Yep. He also does some really interesting things at the McFly farm because, obviously, spoiler alert, Michael J. Fox plays Seamus and Marty in the same scene when they're next to each other. But when Seamus hands the baby to Marty, Maggie crosses in front of the table and in front of the camera. So you don't see the actual exchange, but like you understand that that's what's happening.
Yeah, like,
and it
tricks
just
your brain into it.
Yep, the way that he shot that is just masterful. You know, it's like you wouldn't think about it because today it's just like, oh, just have a green screen stand-in for Marty at the point, you know. But
some idiot in a morph suit, yeah,
exactly.
Thanks to the baby. Yeah, it's easy to forget now in 2021 that these movies were like revolutionary in how much they used these actors in the same scene, especially the second one. People were like the future dinner scene where Marty plays his old self and then like he plays both of his children in that scene too. And like the handing back and forth of that. There's a lot of like film history and documentaries that talk about this as like, this is here. There's before these movies where you shot these things, and then there's after these movies, because they were one of the first movies to use the way that they do it is a fixed point set, and so like everything on the set is glued into place so it can't move, and then you shoot one half of the scene and then you shoot the second half of the scene and then you like seam them together. And like Zemeckis is like one of the first people that did a whole movie like that.
Yes.
And I mean, it revolutionized film. It changed it in like really dramatic ways. And if we didn't have this as like the forward touch point, like twinning in movies wouldn't be like it is today.
Yeah. Zemeckis is truly a pioneer with some of these techniques.
For sure.
I have a note that just says solid moonwalk.
It is a good moonwalk. I love that everybody stops dead in their tracks like, what the fuck is this? Because that's how people reacted when Michael Jackson did it for the first time. People were like blown away by it, and we forget like, oh yeah, it's not ubiquitous. People had never seen this before, and it would feel like magic. Like, oh, there's so many good pieces like that. Oh, also, I forgot to say this at the beginning. I watched this in the 4K UHD, which I had never watched before. Highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah?
I've seen this movie so many times, like, I could tell immediately, like, oh, this is much higher quality than I've watched this in before. It's stunning. And I think objectively, the third one is the best one to watch in 4K like this, because the shots of the horses running are stunning. Like, just absolutely beautiful. And watching the way that the color is shot against the background, you can see it in such higher detail. You get a really good sense for how smart Robert Zemeckis was at planning out this stuff. Like, the way that Marty's clothes originally look against the background of, like, a desert city. It's so sharp and clear that that's the contrast that he's trying to make. It was just beautiful. I just really recommend watching it in 4K if you get an opportunity and have the kind of TV where you can do that. It was just really cool. It made me feel like I was watching this movie for the first time again, because it felt like a new experience. It was just so beautiful.
And the special effects all hold up in the remaster?
Yes, absolutely. There were only a couple of times where I was like, you can tell that this was definitely a green screen, specifically when they're on the train crawling over the woods pile into the like engine car, you can tell like this is a movie set and they're on like a fake train because of the way the smokestack is shot against the background. But honestly, that was the only time it really drew my attention. Every other time I felt like it held up super, super well.
I mean, it's a lot of practical effects. Not surprised.
That's it. That stuff is timeless. It will always look like that. Like we have the technology to clean up film that wasn't super high quality when it was recorded, but those effects will look the same even when they're cleaned up. Like, oh, it's so good. Use practical effects. They're the best.
They're pretty awesome. I couldn't decide how I wanted to watch the movie because, like, I believe it's streaming on Netflix, but I have it on DVD.
It is not.
Oh, it's not? It used to be.
Man, it's Netflix. They change shit all the time.
That's true.
Yep.
I have it on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and Laserdisc.
Do you even have a Laserdisc player?
I do, but it's not plugged in.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I have VHSs I cannot play because I don't have a VHS player anymore.
I have
Same.
one of those, but I don't know if it works because I don't have the proper hookups yet.
Oh, interesting.
Bobby keeps telling me that he'll help me find them, and I keep forgetting to bring it up. But you know,
you gotta.
yeah. Well, maybe one day we can hang out and watch Back to the Future on VHS.
Oh, that'd be fun. Be like old days.
There you go.
Old days. Old days that we can get back to soon because we're all getting vaccinated.
I know, I'm so excited. Oh my god.
Host and Post here, popping in just to say, oof.
I'd also like to spotlight the performances in this movie because Lloyd is a national treasure.
So good. He's so good in this movie.
Yes.
I totally agree.
Christopher Lloyd is good in every
Yes.
movie.
Absolutely.
There are some movies where he is the only good part, but he is definitely an amazing part of every project he's ever been in.
I feel like when you cast Christopher Lloyd, you know what you're getting. And like you cast Christopher Lloyd for Christopher Lloyd. And like he nails it every fucking time.
Yeah, I listened to his recent appearance on Mark Maron's podcast. And apparently he just did a movie where he gets to do like action-y scenes, you know, even at this advanced age.
How old is he?
Oh, God, how old
I
is
have
he
to know.
actually?
I must know how old this man is now. Because he was like in his 50s when they did Back to the Future, I believe.
Born in 1938.
Yeah, so he would have been like just about 50 when they did these. Okay. He's pretty old. That's pretty old to be doing.
Yeah.
He's 82.
That's
He's
pretty
82.
old to be doing action movies, but like, that's fine, I guess. Whatever. Mae West wrestled until she fucking died, basically. So you can do whatever you want as long as you take care of your body and are rich. So
Yeah,
whatever.
But like there's a moment when he meets Clara and he has these big puppy dog eyes, but like because I know him from other stuff, like it was almost scary to see Doc in love because he looked like Judge Doom for a second. You know, but it's just like but little things that he does will like either make it really creepy and wants to kill all the tunes, or I'm in love with this lady that I just met. You know, little things in his performance.
I think too you also get this like wide range of Doc in this movie that you don't really in the other ones, because you get to experience like the like confusion and anger on Doc's behalf about the mystery of how he's murdered, and also the mystery of who is this beloved Clara, and watching that transformation. Like, this plot is about Marty getting back, yes, but also, like, it is a mystery about who murders Doc and the mystery of who Clara is, and of course they won't fall in love because Doc is Doc, and so to watch that, like, immediate transformation, too, is very stark, and I think is so well done. Like, it feels believable. Like, love at first sight, don't particularly believe in it myself, but, like, these characters in this, like, oh yes, you're destined to be together. These two people are supposed to wind up together. And also, like, it makes sense. She's supposed to be dead. She shouldn't be out gallivanting around with people who should be part of this timeline because it could irrevocably fuck things up. And so it makes sense that this woman who is not fated to live throughout this time and this man who doesn't belong here are drawn to each other. They recognize in each other, we both don't belong here. And I think they both do such a great job of conveying that. They like, I love it. I love the scene where he rescues her. I love the scene where he's like flustered while he's giving her her telescope at her doorway. I love when she comes and they like awkwardly flirt and Marty's like, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, I love it. I love that she's also like Doc is dumb. I love him, and he's very smart in many ways, but he's also an idiot. Like we were talking in the drinking game. Like, he's a huge hypocrite. He is fucking with this timeline in like really, really significant ways, and he should definitely know better. And she's also kind of an idiot. Like, she's so convinced that none of what he says can be true, and even when she literally picks up a car labeled Time Machine, she's like, I still don't know. What? It's like, this woman climbs over a moving train car to get to Doc Brown, and like, okay, you two belong together. That's this man who hung from a clock tower, and you, woman who has known this man for a week and is willing to literally die for him in this moment. Like, you're right, you belong together. You two should be together forever.
But Emmett, Jules Verne only published that story like so many years ago.
He only wrote it 10 years ago. I meant it made me feel like a boy. Did it? Is that what you meant? Mary
Steenburgen is just so good.
She's so good in this. I love the casting choice to have a totally new person. That it's not someone from the rest of the series done up as different. Like, it's really clear Doc was alone. Doc.
We also see her come into town and that she should have died. Like, she's new in town and unrelated to the plot previous. It is explained in the situation how she is a new character in this like closed loop.
Right, exactly. I like that a lot, and I thought it was a really good choice. And also, like, Mary Steenburgen doesn't look like the rest of the cast. Right. She doesn't look like someone who belongs in the first or second movie. Like, she doesn't fit visually with those people, and so she stands out as a different new character, but fits in this context. I feel like because we get a lot of new townspeople and like smaller characters in this, it's easier to accept like, here's this totally new character, even though she still like stands out among the rest of the cast. Mary Steenburgen is a striking looking woman, and so I feel like that's part of it. Like, the choice of that is good, but also like, I like that she just appears. Like, she shouldn't be connected to anything else. She should be a fully new character in this time, and they nail it.
She's also styled differently from everybody else, and like,
she wears those like bright colors, and she has a lot of. She feels like she is out of time. She doesn't feel like she belongs in this time in the same way that like Marty doesn't when he first arrives, and pieces of Doc don't either. Even when Doc is dressed the part, he still doesn't feel like he fits here because he doesn't.
Something that I wrote down in my notes, when Marty and Doc are preparing to send Marty back to 1885, and Marty's like, oh, maybe it's a different Emmett Brown. And Doc mentions, no, the Browns were the Von Brauns. Mm-hmm. So were Doc's ancestors Nazis? Is that 100%. Where this is going?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I thought when they said that, and it was like, oh, okay. This is why you are comfortable being...
That's a recent change.
Yeah, like, okay. Oh, okay, you are comfortable being on the run and a scientist, probably because it's in your blood.
Yeah.
Your ancestors probably did the same thing. Yeah, I had never noticed that before, and it immediately stood out to me this time. Like, oh, yep. This was...
Likewise.
This was for the parents. This is for the people in 1985 who had just lived through that war. I was surprised by it. There's a lot of stuff in this that holds up really well in ways that I was just like not expecting at all.
Yeah, learning all of these little details about, Doc Brown's family and Marty McFly's family. Like, the McFlys kept going west instead of staying in New York. Mm-hmm. Like, good for them, for looking for more, I guess. Like, not to say that the Irish who stayed in New York, had it totally bad. I mean, yeah, they did.
I mean, they did.
They totally did. But, like...
It wasn't great out west either, historically. Just saying.
Well, yeah, that's the whole deal.
Sure.
I feel like the McFlys are like the symbol for... the McFlys in 1985, the McFlys in 1955, and the McFlys in 1985 are like the symbol of the American dream. They're the ones who are constantly like yearning for more. They're like, all it takes is hard work, and you just got to put in the time, and like then things will just happen for you. Like, that's... The McFlys are the American dream. Like, that's their whole deal, is that they're an idealized thing that's unreachable.
Yeah. I also wrote in my notes that Doc Brown and Walt Disney would have probably bonded, especially over Jules Verne and trains.
Oh my god, yeah, they would have been like best friends.
Like
100%.
Yes, Doc would have totally loved Epcot.
Oh. Yeah, 100%.
I feel like Walt Disney would have abused Doc Brown personally, but
yeah, I mean, that's like Walt Disney's whole thing. So I don't know that that's like a departure from other people, but I agree.
like Doc Brown would have been one of those people who like launched Tomorrowland that Walt just like built his ideas off of. And...
Oh yeah, for sure. And Doc would have been like, whatever, I don't care.
And then in the 90s, someone would find reference to him, and we'd finally find out who made Tomorrowland. And, you know, the modern Disney would be like, oh, yeah, look at us celebrate this guy.
That we definitely wanted to before, and not because you've all dug this up.
I've recently been watching a ton of these, like, histories of theme park rides and Disney experiences and Disney parks and stuff. So the most recent one that I watched, I believe it was from Yesterworld. It was about the unmade pavilions in Epcot. And apparently there was supposed to be a Philippines pavilion.
Oh.
And I had no idea. And I'm like, what? This was supposed to be a thing? That would have been so cool.
Disney.
There were so many, like, planned expansions to the World Showcase that just, like, didn't happen because of money or, you know, various Michael Eisner-related things.
Shocking.
Yeah, right?
Oh, did Michael Eisner fuck something up? Weird. I don't understand. Strange.
Like, they promised Africa and, like...
It's weird that there's not an Africa. That there's nothing from Africa. It's super bizarre. There's a reason.
Well.
It's racism. Anyway.
Yeah,
I was going to mention this earlier when you were talking about the shots and the like creative eye of Robert Zemeckis. Mm-hmm. There is a shot in this at the end when Clara is leaving and she's like running away, where she's standing at the train and the train is coming on. It is like a direct shot-for-shot reference of Anna Karenina, which I think is really clever and really smart, because in that moment in Anna Karenina, spoilers if you've never read or seen Anna Karenina, she throws herself in front of the train and dies because she's heartbroken. And that in that moment, that's what it felt like that they were going for, was this moment of, is Clara gonna kill herself? Is she gonna fling herself in front of this train? Like, I really liked that, and I thought it was really... I mean, it's a PG movie. Obviously, she's not going to do that. But I like that there's this, like, moment of tension that they create visually. And I thought they just did a great job with that. I read a note of it and was like, I have to make sure I remember this.
Yeah, you know, the combination of Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale just putting in all these, you know, these things to set up different aspects of the story are just so masterfully done. Like, in the script, you have all of these foreshadowing moments from earlier in the series that you don't realize are foreshadowing moments until you finally get there. Like, you put the gun on the wall and you show it, and then you don't use it until the third movie. Like, I'm a crack shot at this, you know?
Yeah, they do a really good job of building up, like, Marty already has the skills for this. Oh, also, he, in alternate 1984, watched this Clint Eastwood movie right before all of this stuff happened, and so it's, like, fresh in his mind, because it was only like a fucking week ago basically that he watched Clint Eastwood do this thing, and then like to adopt that moniker and like have the literally crash into a stove and watch this door fall off. Like, Marty's a dumb himbo, but like he can put one and one together occasionally. Very occasionally. But I agree, I think they do a really good job of like setting that stuff up so that it like blossoms in the third movie. They do a really good job of like paying pretty much everything off. I feel like there's not really anything that gets left open that they don't address in the third movie.
Aside from George McFly.
Fair. George McFly is wrapped up in the second movie. He's upside down. That's it. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Could have done that for edutainment, about people's likenesses and how you're not allowed to use them in movies without their permission, because oh my god, I'm totally blanking on his name.
Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover, like, sued the shit out of Universal and was like, how dare you use my image without my permission? And, like, you would think that that would have been a law for a long time, but turns out Back to the Future 2 is the reason that you can't just use someone in a movie without their permission. Who would have known?
Yep.
I didn't know this.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they used Crispin Glover's footage from the first movie in the second movie, even though he had explicitly said, I don't want to be involved with this project. And so he sued the fuck out of them for like $32 million and won. The judge was like, yeah, you can't just use him and not pay him. Like, it's not gonna work like that. And so they used a different actor for the second one, and that's why he's suspended upside down and in the old makeup, so that it's like not immediately recognizable that it's him. But when they show him waving at the end of the second movie, like, Crispin Glover wasn't compensated for that, and so they sued the fuck out of Universal.
Yep.
That's why we have those laws.
I believe like Crispin Glover has since made up with Robert Zemeckis, but not Bob Gale.
I think you're right. I think I'm almost positive he and Zemeckis have made up, but I mean, I don't blame him, man. This is a huge franchise. He said, I don't want to be involved, and they used him anyway. Like, that's fucked up. Don't do that. That's not good.
I mean, Star Wars has done it.
Yeah, for real. Star Wars, those makes you like sign away all your shit. Like,
that's true.
You sign on.
Oh no, you're in Star Wars now.
Yeah, like that's the whole. Yeah, you have to do that. It's the same thing with like MCU and the Avengers. Like, they can use that footage of you forever. That belongs to them.
Even death will not free you from Star Wars.
No, it won't.
However, in the MCU, to give them credit at least, when Hugo Weaving decided not to continue, they did recast the Red Skull. And granted, the guy does a phenomenal impression of Hugo Weaving, but it's not him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good Hugo Weaving impression. Yeah.
Yes.
Although once you know it's not him,
that's why.
You could tell.
Yeah.
Well,
which
now
is nice.
Next time you watch, next time you see Back to the Future 2, you'll know that the guy hanging upside down is not Crispin Glover.
Right.
Now you've clocked it. You'll know.
I mean, I knew that wasn't Crispin Glover. The thing I didn't know was about the piece.
About him suing them. Footage. Yeah. These movies are cultural touch points for lots of reasons, and it's like weird shit like this, like revolutionized the way that you do two characters being twinning in the same movie, changed movie laws, and changed the way that contracts are written in movies forever because of the way that Back to the Future 2 was made. Like, these are just like staples in American cinema in a way that it's weird. They're like almost like cult movies, but they're so popular that they're not really cult movies.
Yeah.
I have a really good friend, one of my best friends who was in my wedding, has never seen any of them. He grew up in a like community that didn't watch them, and he never had a reason to, and now as an adult he's like, I don't know, I just don't think I would like them. I'm like, oh, that makes me real sad.
Yeah.
But I get it. I understand.
Yep. We all have our own different experiences.
Exactly. There's lots of. I don't like westerns. Who am I to judge anybody? It feels like everyone loves westerns, except for me.
Oh, speaking of westerns,
this one.
Warwick and I rewatched A Million Ways to Die in the West, and there is a Back to the Future shout out in that movie.
Ooh.
I mean, there would have to be.
Yeah, because Seth MacFarlane is a big nerd.
Yeah, totally. That's like his whole thing, is that he's a big nerd.
Yeah. There's a scene where you see this like lightning coming from a shop living, one of those things from a building.
From a Doc Brown place?
From a Doc Brown place, exactly. And
living quarters.
Yes. And Seth MacFarlane just pops his head in and he's just like, what are you doing? And he's just like, weather experiment, as he's covering up the DeLorean.
Nice.
Like, I have a theory that this happens during Back to the Future 3, right before Marty and Doc head back. So it kind of like fits into the timeline.
Interesting. I like that. I love universe tie-ins.
Yes, they're the best. And A Million Ways to Die in the West happens to have like a few of them, which is like so random. Like Jamie Foxx shows up as Django in a scene.
That's strange.
Yeah. But that movie
weird.
is a lot more fun than I remember it being. But we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about Back to the Future Part 3. So, I mean, I think I know the answer to this already. And the listeners probably know already, too, considering how highly we're speaking of it.
Yeah.
Does Back to the Future Part 3 stand the test of time?
Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely.
And something that I wanted to bring up in this episode specifically about how it stands the test of time, there are no gay jokes in this movie. This is a movie made in the mid 80s to late 80s and the early 90s, and Michael J. Fox is a little dude, and they like make a comment about him being like I wrote it down. They said you're a gussied up egg sucking, which like close, maybe if you like really wanted to twist that into a gay joke, maybe you could, but like they don't. And I feel like that's one of the things that makes this movie feel very timeless, is that it's a story that you can hear about. It's about uplifting yourself and the people around you, and it holds up. And like I think a huge part of it is that it doesn't take pot shots at people.
Yes.
It never feels like there are not black people in these movies, and there should be, and like that, other than the band, like, and people who are in like service roles. And I feel like in that sense, because it's set in the 50s, that's a huge part of it. But I feel like the decision to not include black people in like any part of the future, basically, except for the mayor, it sucks. And I feel like that is definitely something that is a mark against these movies. But like as a general story, I feel like is easy to be universally adoptable, because it doesn't do gross shit. Like there's not racism. Even the scene about Marty arriving and calling them Indians, like that is language that does not hold up specifically. But even that scene that's like kind of weird and feels sort of racist at first is really about how the settlers and the like colony people are chasing the natives off of the land, and like you don't realize that at first, and so it feels kind of like weird and racist. But even outside of that, like it's shot in a loving way. Like every shot of the like natives on the horses is beautiful. It's not like they're savages who are trying to like kill Marty or anything. Like that's not what's happening in those scenes. And so I think it's worth mentioning that like the only real people of color in this are probably not really people of color. They're stunt people dressed up to look like natives, and like that sucks and should not be like that, obviously. But outside of that, there's not really gross shit. Like I said, there's not gay jokes. There's not really even like all the scenes with women. There's like, it's not like women are dumb assholes who deserve to be abused. Like that's not how these movies were made. And I think it was a really smart and out of time choice for the time that they were made that makes them feel timeless now, 30 years later.
Definitely. Like there was only that one moment that stood out to me where that guy in the saloon was like, "Where'd you get that shirt? It looks like he took it off one of them Chinese."
Yes, you're right. That was the like other line that I wrote down too. But that's like specifically about. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was specifically about, being a colorful shirt. Really, it wasn't like a race thing. It was just like, oh, he probably got it from someone in the Orient. Like it didn't punch down.
Yes.
It was
agree.
very loving in its portrayal of all these times, even though that there were terrible things going on with people of color around these times also. Like, they talk about the railroad being built and there weren't that many Asians in that town. But, like, it wasn't malicious. They didn't leave them out, just to be like, oh, fuck these people. But
yeah, I thought that they rode a fine line of, we're not including anyone really of color because of the times that we've chosen to set these movies, and the towns that we're telling these stories about are very white, which is a choice. It's a choice that the writers and the directors made. And again, it's 1985, so it's a less surprising choice maybe. But I think it is a surprising choice that, like you said, they don't choose to punch down on like basically anybody. Like even like the McFly family in the first movie are lower class. Like they're not dirt poor, but they're poor. They're a poor American family, even for a white family. And they never really, there's like the implication that they're like trash, but even that, they don't really spend a lot of time like punching down about the fact that they're like economically not at a great place. And I think that's also surprising for a movie made at the time that these were made. Like they make a lot of really considerate choices to not punch down at people, which as an adult in the 2020s, I appreciate even more having rewatched these and not feeling like at any point I had to like, I have to like reset my squick on the like watching a John Hughes movie. You don't have to spend a whole lot of
time being like, well, it was the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are pieces of that where it's like, okay, they definitely made these decisions because it was the 90s, but even that I feel like they did a good job of. But like I was gonna say, like watching a John Hughes movie, I like can't really do anymore. I'm like really uncomfortable by a lot of the humor because a lot of it is punched down and a lot of it is fucking dated in like lots of gross racist and misogynist ways. And even when those movies are fun, it's just like I spend a lot of time justifying it. Like, oh well, it was a time that this was made. And like Back to the Future never feels that way.
Yep.
It feels like you could pick that movie up and watch it now and it doesn't feel like a movie that was made in the 80s. I think you could introduce that to someone now and have them guess when it was made, and I don't think people would guess the 80s. I'm pretty sure that they would guess closer to the 2000s only because of like the way people look. Like you just look like that's the same thing. Like if you show someone something from like the 30s and 40s, people can kind of like generally identify that because people just look different. And so I think that more than anything would identify this as a movie not made today. But like that's kind of it. Like they make really deliberate choices to make it stylized in a way that feels timeless.
Yep. You know, like I've come to realize that as I've gotten older, I've enjoyed less and less comedy that punches down. Mm-hmm. You know, I recently rewatched Galaxy Quest, and that made me want to rewatch Fanboys. And the thing about Fanboys that like people don't really talk about it that much anymore, you know, like I remember a bunch of my friends really loving it, and I remember liking it a lot too, but it punches down at Star Trek, you know, and that doesn't have to be the case, you know. Mm-hmm. Galaxy Quest uses their fans almost as like another character.
Yeah, it's a love letter to the fans.
It is a love letter to the fans.
Totally.
Yes, mm-hmm. and you don't need that kind of punching down comedy you know, to make your movie funny.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And in Back to the Future, you have like Marty who picks up a pie tray. Oh, Frisbee, far out. And then Seamus and Maggie are like, what's the meaning of that? It was right there in front of him.
It was right in front of his face. Like, yeah, they do really clever things about, again, for the time it was made, really surprising things and choices that feel like fun and simple in a way that don't punch down. I just appreciate this movie more and more every time I watch it, I think.
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't know whether it's just the pandemic or me being weird, which is a lot of the case a lot of the time.
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, you know, like I've been thinking a lot about legacy and what you leave behind, and you know the things you'll be remembered for, and just seeing Doc Brown's story about his legacy. You know, mm-hmm. like there's just so many good moments in this movie where you can really take a lot away from it. You know, in terms of filmmaking, in terms of being a decent person, mm-hmm. you know?
Yeah.
Doc charges head first into saving this woman that's in peril, mm-hmm. you know? And we, on the flip side, we have people who will stand at a door and close it as someone's getting beat up on the sidewalk on their mm-hmm. way to church. Yeah. You know, like, there are moments in this movie that paint the best version of people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that element is part of its persisting nature, I think. That's mm-hmm. why, even though it's not a cult classic, there's almost like a cult-like following behind Back to the Future.
Yes.
And you have all of those moments, like in 2015, where people would get together and, you know, cosplay at Lone Pines Mall, mm-hmm. or go to the Wild West set and like mm-hmm. do all of that crazy stuff that they did around that time. It's beloved by many, and there's a good reason for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it just tells such a relatable story about like rising up and being the best person that you can be, and it's it's timeless. I don't know how I will just continue to say that over and over because I love this movie so much and like everybody should watch these movies. But like I do genuinely feel like they hold up in a way that I'm surprised by. I don't feel like I have to make excuses for these as a product of their time in any way. They just hold up really well.
Yep. No long duck dong here.
Yeah. Like they just do such a good job. Like a surprisingly good job for when they were made. I just love it.
Hell yes.
Heck yes.
Cool. Now that we've adequately gushed about
now that we've just like talked about how amazing
3.
this movie is and how great this franchise is and how, it has this great cultural impact, yada yada yada, all that good stuff.
Yeah, we really hope that you'll check out this movie if you haven't seen it. All 3 of them are phenomenal and deserve all of the accolades.
If you feel like, man, I love the first and second one, but I just could never really get into the third one, like watch it again. Just like I cannot recommend enough watching it again and just giving it another chance. It's just such a good movie. It just holds up in so many surprising ways. Well, on that note, everybody, until next week, when we'll be taking you down a lazy river of edutainment about, I don't know, to make a wild guess, I'm going to say probably the Back to the Future ride.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. That's one of the things we'll be talking about. But until then, you can find us on the internet. I'm at NYD Urgency on Instagram.
I am at bsilverio20 on Instagram and Twitter.
I'm at Indecisionist on Twitter and at The Indecisionist on Instagram.
You can interact with us using the hashtag Time2Party. That's time, the number 2, party.
Special thanks to April Moralba for our podcast art and to Marlon Longett of Marlon and the Shakes for our amazing theme song. This has been an Indecisionist production.
Yeah, and party people, here we are, your friends in time.
You're really going to try to make your friends in time thing.
I want it to work. It's not happening. It's not organic. I don't know why.
Stop trying to make fetch work.
But can I just say that I love that line? I almost want to change my email signature to yours in time. Or your friend in time. I
love that. Your friend in time. I like that. That's really pleasant, actually.
Yeah, right? It's real pleasant.
It's kind of hopeful, too. Eventually you'll like me.
Yeah, your friend in time.
Oh my god, that's how I should have ended that fellowship application. Then they definitely would have gotten back to me.
It's a
I am inevitable.
Threat.
Oh my god. Friends, we hope this wasn't too heavy for you. If it was, we'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes.
And then they spin.
Bye, everybody.